All right, you ready?
I'm ready. Thank you, Lord.
Thank you, Jesus. What's happening? Episode 6. Welcome in. Woo. Bradley's not here, so the boy. I almost wanted to call myself a kid, but the boys, we're gonna have some fun.
Okay.
We have Parker Murphy on with us today. He is one of the pastors at our church. I love you to death. I would never tell you this to your face outside of this podcast, but I really do admire you. You are so just a hungry person for wisdom, and you love everyone that God puts in your path very well. And it's something to admire. One other thing that I admire about you is we're just going to dote on you for a second, is that you're hardly ever in a bad mood. And what's really cool is Austin and I just had this conversation the other day, and my wife would probably disagree and Bradley would probably disagree, but I think of this of myself, is we're pretty chill guys. Like, we like to be chill. That doesn't mean that every second of every day we are chill, but that is the ultimate goal. Like if we get upset or stressed, quickest way to get back to peace and just hanging out and chilling, having fun, joyful, right? You embody this to the fullest extent. So I'm excited that you're here today. Austin's back on with us, and we're going to get into a conversation about, because we both, all three of us, because there's three of us, it's not both. We didn't grow up with the greatest father figures to be mentors in our lives, but we ran into along the way men of all ages that we were able to pull things from. And that's kind of the gist of the podcast. You and I were talking about it. Like, I want every episode to be, maybe it's not the full 45 minutes that you're like, oh dude, I was locked in, dialed in that whole time, but there's something that you can take and go like, you know what? I like that. Like, I'm going to grab that and add that into my life, right? Or maybe it's something that's like, oh man, I didn't see that in myself. Just grabbing little nuggets. We've done that along the way with men of all ages in our lives, and we're going to talk about that today. But before we even get into it, we got to talk about my emotional roller coaster this morning, and then I'm going to start firing away questions, and we'll get into the conversation. Austin, you weren't here,
Okay.
so I'm going to catch you up to speed.
Okay.
Parker's caught up to speed. So we talked a little bit about it. Like my truck yesterday, Bruce, the battery light came on just out of the blue. I'm going like, okay, this is a brand new battery. This is a year-old battery. There's no problem. There's no reason why this battery should be dying. Woke up this morning, still had a little juice on my way to our staff meeting, and I had to make an instant decision. I had my 9-year-old in the back. I called, said, hey, if I come to the staff meeting, my truck's probably not going to start after. I'm going to need to pivot, and I'm going to need to go to the place and get a new battery. Go get a new battery, spend the great amount of money that batteries cost these days, switch it out, start my truck, and it immediately continues to die. So I'm still trying to hold myself together. My 9-year-old's in the back, going like, hey, I'm a healthy man. I need to control my emotions.
Okay.
So I don't know about this. I haven't done this since I was younger, having to drive a car like in this condition, right? So mind you, we're clear on the other side of town. We know how many lights and stop signs that are in Ventura. Like, there's one every 10 feet for those of you that do not live here. So every time I'm coming to a red light, I'm having to put my truck into neutral and just gas it so I don't die.
Shane, can I just say I'm so happy you experienced this?
Thank
Because this
you.
is my daily life, driving my
yes.
1984 Volkswagen van again, dude. It's just you put it in neutral, and you got to keep your foot a little on the gas, or else it starts fluctuating a little bit. So now you know my life. I call it adventure. You know, we talk about the heart of a man. I think a man needs some adventure in his life. So I drive an old car, and what's weird about your car is Bruce, if you see her on the street, looks like a truck that would be acting like this. It's a him.
Yeah,
it's 2026.
He looks like a truck.
They would be acting like this.
They would be
Mirror
acting
kind
like
of
this.
hanging off, fogged over. Do you have a crack on the windshield?
I have not on the. I have a crack on my side mirror.
There it is.
And there's a rip in the seat. Bruce has been through some things. So like I imagine him as like an old Army vet.
Okay.
Tried and true, V8, like he's ready for the long haul. So that's why this morning, this was totally abnormal for me. I'm going like, buddy, we got 159,000 miles. We got a whole nother lifespan ahead of us. What's happening right now that you would choose to do this today, right? So I proceed to drive through. I ran many stop signs today. So I didn't have to my truck died probably 4 or 5 times while I'm going through the intersection, it dying. And I don't know if you know this, but when your truck dies, all the power steering dies with it.
My van just doesn't have power steering at all.
I'm like, I got my kid in the back and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I'm trying to control my emotions. I'm praying, Lord, for every green light, every red light came my way. And by the time we got to the auto place because I'm calling them as I'm doing this, going can I drop my truck off? I don't know what to do with this thing. Get to the auto place, pull in, truck dies, and I just go man, that was rough. And my 9-year-old goes I just hear him in the back go yeah.
The trauma that comes with that, with kids, being in vehicles with your parents that you just know aren't going to make it, right? Been there, done that many times. So Graham that will be trauma for him for the rest of his life. And the
fact is I hope it wasn't trauma, but it was oh, you know what? That was pretty chaotic. And my dad maybe 15% lost it a little bit in regards to getting stressed out. Mm-hmm. But I was a little bit proud of myself afterwards because I didn't have a meltdown. But on the serious side of this too, every opportunity that God sends into my life or doesn't send or just happens, right? Let's just not say that God sends trials into our lives. So all the theologians out there don't go, every opportunity that I have when stress or trials come in, I'm not the greatest at praise being my first response. And so as I'm walking with Graham from the auto shop to the church this morning, I'm going I want to use this as an opportunity, Lord, even though this is a small thing, to be able to go you know what, I praise you in the midst of this. I don't want to ruin the opportunities anymore when stuff like that happens to just complain my way through, but to really go okay, I trust you. I don't know if this is going to be $400 or $800, but I trust you. I appreciate the fact that I made it here, even though that journey was literally I cracked open a Red Bull as soon as I got here. I was so stressed out.
Well, I'll say this. I've known you for a couple years now, and it seems like a constant pattern in your life where either
in the
road
vehicle.
Rage, the vehicles.
Let's not say rage.
Okay, let's just, we co-lead a Bible study on Thursdays.
Okay.
It seems quite often there's something that comes up with you being on the road in a vehicle.
Yeah. My wife said this the other day too. She said, oh, road rage. I said, can we just not use the word rage? Because rage to me, what that says, thank you, Matt. I'm glad that made you chuckle. Rage says to me, somebody who's out of control, flipping somebody off, running them off the road. I am very much a road etiquette person that loves to talk. So I very rarely yell, but I'm constantly talking to people hello, we're on the freeway. Speed limit's 65. How long are we going to go 45?
Yeah.
Right? I'm that type of guy. And I am the type of guy too that when I do pass you, I'm giving you one of these. And I had someone do this to me the other day, which I was okay, that's what that's like. You're driving past and you just do the lean over to see who on earth is driving 45 in the 65. I'm that guy. So not rage, but definitely a little bit more on the irritated side.
Maybe a test your faith.
Yeah.
Because it comes up quite often. Yeah. And it's one of those ones where it's all right, I'm seeing a pattern here.
Yeah.
I think vehicles. So I have intentionally driven old beat up vehicles, things that are cool, things that are unique. Love my 1984 Vanagon. And the reason for me is because so much of life is so easy to push aside the things that are in us that come out under stress. Somebody told me years ago, what comes out when you're squeezed is really what's inside of you. And I think that there's these moments that God presents to us where we get to go, oh, so I actually am more angry than I show. And sometimes for me, that van has shown me, man, why am I so frustrated or so angry? I know I'm going to be able to work through this. I carry enough parts on that van to practically rebuild the whole motor because it breaks down so often. So I know I can get through this. Why then, even though I know this is going to be okay, do I feel the way I feel? And so many times there's an insecurity underneath it. There's a bitterness or a frustration or a disappointment with life that I'm covering with an easier emotion, which for me is normally anger.
Yeah.
And so in those moments, when my kids are in the van or my whatever is going on, friends are there, I'm constantly, probably like you this morning, just thinking about my kids in the back and what am I showing them and how am I forming them? And it's funny, I think most kids who grow up with clunker cars they'll be 18 years old and get into this terrible situation where they're paying $900 a month for their
because they were like
awesome car because they don't want to go through it.
Dude, like, no, I will not drive a car like my father.
What's encouraging to me is I was worried about that with my kids driving the rig we do. Breaks down every road trip. We love road trips. But my son for his first car wants one of these. And my daughter for her first car wants the truck version of these called the Doka.
That's awesome.
So I think we're arriving somewhere where they're seeing the point of it.
See, I grew up with parents who did not have the best of vehicles, and brakes have gone out and cars have broken down. And so I just made a commitment to myself when I was financially stable enough to not have to deal with that. So I lease a truck. It's been a blessing on every level. That's mostly because of the PTSD that I've experienced with my parents in vehicles. But I also will say there is something to be said around the idea of like when some of those, to your point, when you get squeezed and you see what kind of comes out, it's kind of the first sign that the indicator of the heart, something's not right there. Yeah. Right. We talked about that at a Bible study not too long ago, where if I start to maybe slip a curse word, or if I start to like get frustrated easily, I'm like, all right, I need to check my heart posture. It's not the person in front of me going slow. It's something below that. It's the layer deeper than that. So that's typically my first indicator of like, all right, I need to get right with the Lord or do something to get my heart posture in a better place.
After you just said that right now, I could just gonna go ahead and say it out loud. My thing has got to be pride, because when you said it's not the person's fault going 45, I'm like, I might have some things to work on, but it's for sure that person going 45, dude.
What's sad is in my van, it's probably me. I was smiling and wave. That's why I limo tinted my front windows so nobody can see. I'm like, I'm trying. If there's even a 1% incline grade, we're going 45 on the freeway. It's not a good moment.
And then you pull up next to Parker and he's just happy, jolly, thumbs out. Like,
that's it, dude.
What's the cheesy lines? It's not about the destination. It's about the journey.
I will say my biggest probably issue with driving is myself in the sense of like margins, right? So I tend to cram my schedule full of things, and I tend to think that I can get places faster than I
call you a time optimist.
Yeah,
I used to be one of those.
Yeah. I'm a time optimist. That's a great way to put that. And then I'm not taking into consideration, like, I plan my route ahead of time, but I can't plan the drivers or the construction work or the red lights. And so I just, for whatever reason, after so many years of driving, cannot have those things like click. They don't click together. So margins, a little bit of pride, a little bit of anger, all dosed in there. So that's good.
Shane, I have a segue into some of the stuff that you want to process in the beginning around what are some things we've learned from other men that we value. The reason I own the van that I do is after going on one road trip with a man that's been so influential in my life, this guy, Jeremy.
Okay.
And we are going up and over these mountain passes together, and we're going to a men's retreat. So there's 5 guys inside of this Volkswagen van again with a motor that originally had like 84 horsepower. And so it's probably in the 70s now. And as we're cresting these mountain passes, we're maybe going up at 30 miles an hour. And we got a bunch of grown men in this car, and we're all laughing our heads off and talking. And Jeremy's explaining in greater detail the philosophy that I just described. And I was sitting in the back going, I had a 2003 like turbo diesel Ford truck, no problems with it, could fly up any pass at 100 miles an hour. And in the way he described why he got this particular vehicle, to slow down in life, to be able to have more margin, to make more margin for himself, to create these moments where his kids could see him stressed, work through something, and then overcome it, inspired me. And so this is one of those things.
Put himself in a position to stretch himself.
And so that's my thing. I could drive any car I want practically. I'm at that stage of life, and I choose to drive this vehicle. And one of the things that I've learned from this guy, Jeremy, in particular, as we move into that portion of the conversation, is really your kids are watching you. And you're either going to be intentional about creating opportunities to show them what a healthy man looks like, or it's just going to happen.
Yeah.
But so many people, as they get older and they've raised kids, they regret not having certain conversations or not prioritizing things where you can get your kids into an environment where what you've been instructing them in actually has to be played out.
Yeah.
And so it was just this philosophy where we literally get back from this men's retreat, and I had bought a van and drove out and picked it up.
Yeah.
No thought. Talked to my wife. She just gave me a thumbs up in the text. And I've been driving one ever since.
That's cool. I'm literally in this season right now with Parker. So Chris and I, every so often, Krista likes to go through all the old photos of our kids and reminisce, and it's really a sweet time. But she started noticing, she pointed it out. She goes, look at all the pictures with Parker and you in it. And he's looking at you in almost all of them. Like he's looking up at you. And I do see this in my son. And Brad, a few episodes ago made the joke that I tell my kids that I love them too much and all of this or whatever. It's like I do. I affirm them a lot, just because my love language is words of affirmation. But Parker is such a sponge. We had this conversation because he's starting football for the first time, tackle football. So we go to the first practice, and he comes up afterwards after they end the huddle, what they do. And he comes up and he's got like this look on his face. Like he's just like, was just through something stressful. And we get in the truck. I'm like, what's up? He's like, oh my gosh, Dad. He's like, there were so many F-bombs Coach dropped right now, dude. And so he's entering into this place where I said, okay. I said, well, this is the real world. Like you're going to go in and people are going to they're going to talk differently. They're going to have different values. They're going to think that different things are okay. And you're going to have to, this is where the rubber meets the road with your faith, to be able to go into those situations, not only just be a light, but also be able to use your filter through Christ that you have to go like, this is something they do. This isn't something that I do. This is something they may see as normal, but this is something that I see as normal. I look through a different lens. And so we're literally going to be walking through this now to where it's like, hopefully the way that I've influenced him in walking like a man and pointing him to Jesus, now it's going to be tested, for lack of a better word. And Chris is like, oh no, we can't be doing that. And I'm like, listen, he's going to run into this in high school, 7th grade. This is the journey. So it's time to let him, feel that and go through it and see how he processes it. And I'm going to have to pull the helicopter away a little bit as a dad. So yeah, we're walking through this. So it's really, really good the way your kids see you. And I know, Austin, you don't have kids yet, but soon.
Yeah.
Soon.
Hopefully.
Very soon.
Yeah.
So I'll ask the question, rephrase it again, Austin. You can kind of share a little bit. Parker alluded to it. As I have here, what are some of the things that we have learned or picked up from other men in our lives that we have found to be valuable? Because the fact is, like I talked about earlier, is we didn't necessarily have dads that did that. Mm-hmm. So we either picked up good things or bad things along the way from either friends or other men in our lives, right? You kind of even got a little more specific, is it didn't have to be father figures. It could be brothers, right? You know what I mean? So what are some things, maybe you can talk about one thing that you picked up that stands out, that was very valuable, that you learned from another man?
Yeah, I would say the thing that comes to mind is not something super specific that I took from one person, as much as I started to, give my life to the Lord and surround myself around other believers, I realized how important it was to have counsel. And so like the thing I wanted to talk about specifically was just like how important it is for a healthy man to have counsel. And I think that's something I learned through other men in the church, was that, I think growing up, the stigma for men is like to hold a lot of things in. And, as you surrender to the Lord and you start to go through this vulnerable state, you start to realize like, you have to share this with some people, and who you get your counsel from and who influences you is extremely, it's a vital piece of your life, and I think how you are shaped as a man in the future. Mm-hmm. And so I think for me specifically, it was just like learning how to get counsel from men that can point me back to Scripture. And that has been one of the biggest pieces of my life and my journey in the last 5 to 8 years, was just like surrounding myself around different men who I could go to with things that I'm struggling with in life, or situations that I found myself in, right? Where, it wasn't a lot of motivational speech. It was, here's what Scripture says. Yeah. Right. And I think that to me is a sign of a healthy man, is somebody who can ultimately be able to express themselves to other men, but also have men around them that can point them back to Scripture. And to me, that's been like, just mind blowing in how much it's helped me in my journey, go through situations in my relationship now, in my workplace. And I think it's really important that you have those type of men in your life. And so that's something I think I have come to find be just extremely vital And I would recommend any man listening to this podcast to find men that they can go to for counsel, especially men that point you back to Scripture. I'm not going to say that motivation doesn't get you so far, but you talked about a little bit having a filter, and I feel like that filter is Christ. And there's men in your life giving you, or who have influence on you or giving you information, and their filter isn't Jesus first. I can only take so much of that to heart. And so I'm not saying that there aren't people out there in the world that have wisdom and can teach you things and are experts in spaces, but when it comes to things that really hit the heart and really hit the mind, I feel like I need to have men in my life that I can go to for counsel for some of those things, and they have to be with the Lord, walking with Jesus in the word, you know what I mean, for me to really take what they're saying and run with it. And that has changed my life dramatically. So I would say counsel has just been like top of mind. How do I get more of it? You know, once I've kind of uncovered that this is so important, you know what I mean? And so I think I've just learned that in my journey over the last couple of years of just being around other men who do that in a healthy way. So yeah.
That's so good. That's so good. You said a few things there that stood out. The first thing was like, I don't know, sometimes I can be around girls, right? We have them around the office and stuff like that. And they'll talk about what they talk about together. And I remember telling someone the other day, I was like, do you know that guys don't talk like that to each other? Like we don't discuss like, you know, very intimate things. We have the very much like it's in our DNA, I think, for majority of men to be like the Lone Ranger type, right? Or the lone warrior, if that's the way you rather put it, like to where we handle stuff ourselves, want to fix stuff ourselves. We got all the answers ourselves, all those things. It's about just like the isolated man. And so what you said is really good, because intimacy for men with other men is really, I think, something that a lot of guys struggle with.
And it's also, too, to highlight that, it's probably sometimes the biggest blocker for them to have a true relationship with Jesus, right? Because intimacy I think, prevents a lot of men from going into a healthy relationship or knowing what that looks like.
Yeah.
Because maybe they didn't have one with their father or another man in their life, and now all of a sudden they need to be intimate with somebody that they can't see in the physical. I think that's a blocker and a barrier for a lot of men that probably takes a long time for them to identify or they just don't know how to do.
Right.
And so that's a piece that's like huge to that.
100%. I agree. I think that puts a really big barrier in that. You could even take it to like the simplest level where if you didn't have a healthy father figure in your life that hugged you and loved on you, right? I think there's some dads that take the approach of like, you know, the kids grow up and go like, my dad never told me he loved me. And he goes like, well, they should have knew. I told him once. I didn't need to remind them. You know what I mean? But you see that in like grown men where it's like I hug some guys at church, your brother, for example, too. And you could just tell, and I just hold on to him even longer. And I nuzzle my neck in his neck. And I go like, just let it happen.
Totally.
But it's like, because honestly, I haven't always been that way. Because it was like, it's unnatural to hug another guy, to smell his musk. You know what I mean? I can just hear Bradley's voice on here. That's still unnatural. It's like, yeah, case in point, buddy. You know what I mean? But like, that's a real barrier. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that specific thing, but.
Man, you guys are hitting on something that this morning when I was thinking about this first question, I couldn't get my head off of. And it's the thing I've received that's changed my life more than anything else from other men. And really two guys come to mind strong. Jeremy and then my father-in-law, Phil, is blessing. So I've received so much instruction from other men throughout the years. Hey, you should do this. Hey, you should do that. That counsel piece, which is life-changing and has put me on incredible trajectories. But what I think very few men actually get in their life is blessing from another man.
That's good.
And this morning I was just thinking about the times in the New Testament that the Father speaks, the Father God speaks. And you know, there's only 3 times in the entire New Testament that the Father speaks. And it's at the baptism of Jesus. It says, this is my Son, whom I love. With him, I'm well pleased. And it's before he did any ministry.
Yeah.
His public life is non-existent. He's like a construction worker. And then he gets baptized and this voice from heaven speaks over him. The next time is at the transfiguration. And Jesus is transfigured and there's Moses and Elijah and it's this crazy scene. And the Father says almost the same thing. This is my Son whom I love. Listen to him. And then the very last time is when it's in John, when Jesus is like going, Father, glorify yourself. And then the Father speaks and says, I have glorified myself. And it's through Jesus that he's going to glorify himself. And there's just something about this where he's blessing before he's instructing. Mm-hmm. And I think that so few of us receive blessing from other men. And what that looks like is a guy there's a line in kind of the Christian man formation stuff from Ronald Rolheiser. He says, if a man isn't being admired by another man, that man is being wounded. Mm. And he goes on to tease that out. And what it means is if a man isn't pursuing your heart and helping you see what God has placed inside of there, and then speaking not just to your achievements, but to your identity, then it's incredibly hard to know who you are on your own. Like no man is an island. The lone wolf concept is not biblical.
Right.
And when we get around these counsel of other men, I think instruction only goes so far. I think that the men that have impacted me most in my life are speaking to my identity. To who God made me to be, because that to me is some of the hardest stuff to believe about myself. You know, who I am. And so the guys that have spoken to that, it frees me. You know, in the most unique way. It shapes the trajectory of my life. It gives me a vision for what I'm going to go after. And I think about that with this is how I operate in youth ministry. This is how I operate with my kids. Is okay, I can instruct people all day long, but if I don't know this person's heart, I can't bless them in a meaningful way. I can't call out what God has placed into them. And when we're thinking about discipleship or raising kids or forming men or whatever it is, if you don't have someone in your life that can speak into your heart, you're going to self-initiate into stuff, and you're going to wonder who you are. And you're going to feel the sense of just being unsettled. And so there's something about this art of blessing that I think unlocks and has unlocked my life in some incredible ways.
That's so good. I think about like, you know, the Old Testament, and I still believe that there's power in this today. I just mentioned this to somebody, like, you know, Jacob blessing all of his kids, right? Right? The power of the blessing, passing it on to the kids. And most of them, if not all of them, it wasn't a great blessing, right? But it's the purpose of like, there was a powerful thing to where the firstborn got, you know, the birthright blessing, right? And there was something to that to where it was like, it was powerful. It spoke to who they were, right? And when Jacob spoke to all of his sons, he spoke to like the identity. One of them was, you were angry, you have this, and so that'll be your, you know what I mean? So there is something that, to what you're saying, Parker, that's still true today. Like I would love to do, I was telling the person the other day, it's like, I would love to do that with my kids. You know what I mean? Both of them. To where it's like I pass on that blessing. I know you're speaking to more than just that initial like isolated incident of passing a blessing on, but speaking to a person's identity. I like that you said that too, and even to take that even more detailed for people out there, like what you do is not who you are. So sometimes people take that like you speaking a blessing into them is like, you know, you're a pastor, you're a speaker, you're a great this or that. It's like no. I think what you're alluding to, it's even deeper. You're a son. You are loved. You are, you know what I mean? It's who you are. It's not what you do, right? Which is so good. I love that.
And the qualities that God has placed inside of you. You know, like I look at my son, and pretty often I'm so impressed with how tender your heart has stayed, even when your friends have hurt you. You've been like that since you were a boy. It's just one of my favorite qualities about you, dude. You know, it's like calling out the things that God just has placed in him. And my role as dad is to nurture that. And then with my high school students that I work with, as they get to know him more, God gives you this revelation. You know, if you're looking for it, God will give you revelation of the hearts of people. And then speaking to that and speaking to who they are, it changes everything. Because one of the unique things I think about Jesus's ministry, as opposed to most people who are in church work or who go out and just, they get saved and they're like, all of a sudden their life starts to have purpose and meaning, and they want to find ways to like express that. And so maybe they're being missional with their coworkers, or they're, you know, trying to lead their family. So many people try and work for blessing. They want to achieve and receive.
Right.
But when Jesus starts his ministry, he starts out with blessing. So he's not working for blessing, he's working from blessing.
Right.
And it's, that pattern isn't just with Jesus, he places it on us. Like the last scene in the Gospel of Matthew is the Great Commission. I think guys love the Great Commission. You know, if you're a Christian guy and you're like, all right, it's something to do.
Something we can do. Put our hands on control, right?
Of all the nations. You know, it's so masculine. And then Luke's Gospel has such a different approach. At the end of the Gospel of Luke, it says that while he leads them out to the vicinity of Bethany, and Jesus lifts up his hands and blesses them. And while he was blessing them, he was taken up into heaven. That's the last scene they see of Jesus.
Blessing them.
As they start their public ministry, it's mirroring something similar to what the Father did to him as he started his public ministry. Mm-hmm. And so I think for a lot of us,
so good,
man, if you're working from a space of God blesses you, you are a son or daughter, you are loved. And as you go out in the world, it's not to achieve something so the Father smiles upon you. He already is. Mm-hmm. And so you get to live this full and free life, free from this like need to achieve and receive from the Father God. But no, you're blessed. Yeah. I love you. Where you go, I'll go. I'll be with you. This kind of stuff. And it changes how you do stuff.
Yeah.
It changes how you do everything.
I have a question because I think you're 100% right. And I'm curious how you go about that, because a lot of men guard their heart, right? And so it's like, how do you get to the point where you can see those qualities or speak to the heart? Like, I think you say it and it sounds so simple, but I don't think it is so simple. And so how do you get to that point with somebody where you can start to identify those things that you can speak to?
I couldn't do it until someone had done that for me. Mm. And so I think that there's this necessary thing where a man has to be able to, so as I've talked to Phil and Jeremy, they've each had men. It's kind of like a lineage of different people who've helped them in that. Some of these people in their lives, and some of the people that have been influential in my life are long dead, old writers and old thinkers, Christian men who help you unlock your heart, help you unlock your soul. There's guys like John Eldredge, who's still alive, who are writing on these kinds of things. But as I knew myself better, and as I received from God, learning to sit in silence, learning to ask God, okay, what do you really think about me? Mm-hmm. And then learning to know the scriptures and know what God's voice would sound like and say, that is not from God. Mm-hmm. That narrative in my mind, that is not God. The more I got to know the scriptures, the more that I was vulnerable with other men, the more that other men paid attention to me in a loving way. And then the more I knew myself, the easier it was to be able to see what God was doing in the hearts of other people. Yeah. And so really like knowing the heart of God and who he is, because then you see what he's placed inside of people, knowing myself, and then being in that vulnerable space with other guys was huge. I haven't struggled with vulnerability with other guys really ever. I think that's like a blessing that comes from being raised predominantly by a single mom is so often it's like, these are the conversations that her and I were having when I was young. Yeah. And so it was like always kind of wanting to process and talk about my heart and what I was feeling, what I was thinking. And you get made fun of a lot for that, right? It starts in elementary school. I think most guys start shutting down by 5th grade because if you get hurt on the blacktop and you fall and you cry, what does everybody do? Yeah. Make fun of you. Right. You might have like one Christian kid who's like helping you, but you learn to guard your heart. Yeah. And not in the beautiful Proverbs way. Yeah. In a way that ends up, what ends up happening is our armor over time becomes our coffin. So the things that were meant to protect us end up keeping us enslaved as we get older. So good. And so you got to get freedom first, and you got to know the heart of God. You got to be vulnerable in a community that's safe to be vulnerable in.
And that's what I'll say, going back to kind of what I said, and it clicks for me in my mind now that you say that. It's like, that's what was so important for me about the counsel that I received, that like, they weren't pointing to themselves and they were pointing to scripture. And I was just like, well, I've spent enough time with the Lord that I know his voice and I know his word is true. And I know who I am as a son and my identity. And when I go to someone for this, it's like that they can point me back to scripture that helps me, land there has been extremely important. So it's a great word.
And it's really kind of one of the core things that we're trying to get across here with this is like I think it was a few recordings back, was to be a healthy man, you have to become a healthy son first. You can't skip that process. And so what that means for me is like I've had a conversation with a few different guys recently where, they're somewhat new in their faith, but you see this in a lot of people, not just men, to where it's like, we can read the Bible, see what we need to do, like you said, the commission, and we do that part. And then we get burnout, or we get shame comes into play, condemnation comes into play, and it's that 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. And you find people that are in this perpetual circle in their faith where they're constantly in condemnation and shame. It's because they have not established the core foundation that they are absolutely loved, no conditions. You're a kid. You are the child of God. And so like I've told a couple of guys recently, it's like, you need to start asking God to show you how much he loves you. That's the number one thing. If you can discover anything in like because it's in his word, right? That's what we're pointing to. If you can discover anything that will be beneficial for you, it's discover that God means what he says when he says that I sent my son because I love you so much. And really that's your foundation that you build everything else on. So that way, when you do fail or when crap does hit the fan, your foundation, everything on top of it might be shaky. Some things might break and but your foundation is firm, right? Your foundation that no, I am a child of God. Because to your point, as soon as Jesus has that moment with his father, where he says, this is my son, whom I'm well pleased. The very next chapter in Matthew, I believe it's 4, Satan comes and goes are you really his son? If you're really his son, if you really are. And that, I believe, is the biggest thing that a lot of people, you fail, you're not understanding. Are you really the child of God? Are you really his? Are you sure? And we tend to, as people, examine ourselves through our own lens. So we determine how much God loves us through how much we're able to our capacity for love with somebody. So it's dude, this person offended me so many times. Okay, first time, forgive you. First time we do this, family members, probably for the most part, because we, family members are repetitive offenders a lot of the time. And we go we start to categorize ourselves and see ourselves through that lens of going God must be done with me because I did this. So I must not be legitimate anymore. Or maybe it was the way that we were raised and we picked that up from the way that we were punished. Because that was one of the things I want to go into that I learned was the discipline didn't mean I wasn't loved. That was one of the things that I picked up from one of the guys that I learned. His name was Ernie Waldo. He was our office administrator at the church that Brad and I came from. I'll never forget. I used to go over to our Vegas campus and I would preach once a month. And one month we were going, a few friends of mine, we would stay at the pastor's house over there. And a few friends of mine, they wanted to go see a concert in Vegas. And they said, hey, can we ride with you? And can we stay at the house with you on this trip? And I'm in my mind, I think I'm probably 28 years old. I'm this is no problem, dude. So I went to the staff meeting. And this is where I learned to ask forgiveness, not permission.
Classic youth ministry line.
I went into the staff meeting and I brought him the scenario, and the pastor's no. So I'm oh crap. So I ended up taking him anyway. Go to Vegas. Everything happens. Come home. Right. We're driving into the church parking lot with the church van. I'm going okay, done. Got away with it. As soon as I pull up in the church parking lot and park the van, this car rolls up and parks, and my lead pastor, my associate pastor, and Ernie all get out. Same time, we're all getting out of the van. And I'm thinking in my mind, I'm going crap, I'm done. And so we all get out of our vehicles, we're packing up and we're walking, and nobody says anything. And Ernie goes, oh, did you have a good trip? And I'm just yeah, dude, it was a blast. It was cool. Church went well, And he's that's great. And it's nothing happened. The following Monday, I get intercomed in. Hey, buddy. Why don't you come down? I want to talk to you about something. And I'm going oh no. And I go in there and he goes, so you took him anyway. And I was dang it. I thought you forgot, dude, because you didn't say anything yesterday. And he got on to me pretty good. But afterwards, it was the way that he loved me through it. And he shared a story about he had a daughter, and his daughter made him this ceramic coffee mug at school. And he had it in his office at home on a shelf. And she lied to him one day. And he called her into into his office. And he said, hand me the mug that you made for me. And she handed it to him, and he threw it on the ground, and it shattered. And he says, I want you to pick up all the pieces, and I want you to glue them all back together and bring it back to me. And so he said she went and took it, glued it all back together. And he said he took some water in front of her and he poured it in this mug, and all the little, cracks that were still in there was water. And he just was this is what happens when you break trust. You know what I mean? But just the way that he loved and walked through that, to where my reference of screwing up like that in the past was that relationship's over. It's severed. I'm in so much trouble. I'm never coming back from this. Discipline for me was end of the road. This is terrible, right? But these older men showed me, because we had another gentleman at the church too, who's one of the elders. Man, he'd crack on you, dude. Like, just get onto you if you were dropping the ball. But afterwards, he'd go like, let's go have some fun. Let's go have some fun. And I'm going like, I can't tell if you're mad at me and we're good or like what, dude. Like, I'm like on an emotional roller coaster. But it was because I had the two separate, like, that discipline wasn't love, right? So that was one of the things. Just when you know you're loved by somebody, discipline is a part of that, and it's for actually our benefit. I think you're gonna probably flip to Hebrews, right? So Hebrews 12. And you can read it because I don't have it memorized. I'm not one of those people. But it says, like, unless you're disciplined, you're an illegitimate child. So, like, for me, like, discipline, confrontational conversations, difficult conversations that for me was like, I'm not sure if we're going to be okay after this. Those men taught me that, like, no, it's actually healthier to have those conversations because that's a part of, like, love. Mm-hmm. And so it really helped me, as I have fallen many times in my relationship with the Lord, to not spiral off, dig a hole, and bury myself in the sand because I think God's going to strike me with lightning, as opposed to like, no, like, okay, Lord, like, this doesn't affect me seeing you as loving me or not. Does that make sense?
It's a powerful example. Our culture's got discipline so screwed up. We either think it's Jocko, I
have read that book. I had to read that book for my day job,
dude. So many of those types of things, right? Where it's suffering, it's grinding, it's mastering yourself. I think there's elements of that are truthful, or we think punishment.
Yeah.
So in the work context, okay, we're going to get some discipline. We think punish, crush, destroy.
Yeah.
And you got to sit back and go, okay, let's talk about the Bible. Discipline. There's another word that's all over the New Testament that sounds so similar to it's disciple. And so disciple means student. Jesus was called rabbi, it means teacher.
Yeah.
And he had disciples, which just means students.
Yeah.
And so discipline is really the art of making sure that someone grows as a student. And so when it's punishment, punitive, definitive, done, crushing, it's not discipline. And that has been dealt with on the cross. So our relationship with God now is underneath this idea of discipline. God disciplines those he loves, the scriptures teach. And it's this idea of he actually wants you to grow and develop, to become like his son. And that's one of the ways he does it.
Yeah.
Do I like it? No. But it is true. It's one of the ways he forms us into the image of Jesus. It's not by crushing by any means. It's by restoring us and teaching us and walking with us. And it sounds like you got a lot of that, a good form of that throughout your journey.
Good form of that. Because another thing was, as a young 20-year-old coming in, not having anybody that pushed me in a good way, I thought my capacity for work, for things that were maybe stressful or difficult was like this. And so when I came in and a lot of these guys surrounded me, it was, like you said, it wasn't something that I was like, yay, let me get on board. It was like, sometimes kicking and screaming. But after a while, you realize like, oh, my capacity for things is a lot bigger than I thought they would be. And you don't reach that capacity, at least in my opinion, does not grow without an uncomfortable stretching of sorts, right? It won't. We talked about this the other night at Bible study too, like some of the things like character, you don't just wake up in the morning, because that's kind of our idea is that we're going to pray, we're going to sleep, God's going to download that character trait or that discipline, and you're going to wake up in the morning and go like, yes, thank you. Like I have self-control. I feel the download. It's there. It's like, no, like there is a stretching in our character, a stretching that gets us to this place where we realize we can handle more than we did. Again, it's our faith is something that's, I believe, maybe this is not the right vernacular. It's grown. Like you don't just wake up in the morning and you have more faith. Like faith is grown through the things that you go through and you praising the Lord through it, seeing him come through, right? To a certain extent, right? It says we've all been given a measure of grace. So when I think about a measure, I think like I take a measuring cup and I put it in and then I work it and then something grows out of it, right? As opposed to like, he's given me like a half cup of faith and that's what I got. And I just pour my faith out on stuff. It's like, no, like that faith, you measure that in and it can like grow. Like I always picture a loaf of sourdough bread, but it's not without the kneading and the resting and the working it in.
Discipline has to come from a place of love, right? Or a place of wanting to see somebody grow. And I think that's something that my dad did really well in my brother's life, was that like he never disciplined us out of a place other than love, right? Yeah. And I remember one thing he told me from a long time ago that has always stuck with me is like, sometimes the truth comes from the people that you love the most. And it's like that, statement always sits with me as I've grown as a man, where it's just like sooner or later someone's going to tell you the truth and it's going to hurt. Yeah. But it's like, it comes from a place of love. And I don't know why, but that's just what's in my mind right now, thinking about like how important that is to the discipline piece. You know what I mean? And it's got to come from a place of love, and it's got to come from a place of growth. And you almost got to put yourself in the father's shoes, right? It's like, how do I, it's like as a child, you don't know what is in store for you in the future, right? Yeah. Or what is on the other side, and the father knows. And it's like, as much as, it hurts in the moment, it's like he always has what's better for you. Mm-hmm. There's always a better path forward. There's always something that you are meant to walk into or meant to grow into. And it's like, it's just so hard to see sometimes. Mm-hmm. But it's reassuring. And I think for a lot of men out there, if you are disciplining somebody or your children or whatever, just like, I would encourage that it comes from a place of love.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. I was thinking earlier when you were talking, and you just reminded me, it's the quote by Mr. Roosevelt that says, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
They don't care to know until they know how much you care.
Exactly. Right. So it's like this idea of like, you can say all the things, teach all the things, try to discipline, do all of that. But it's like, it starts with, this is what we're kind of talking about. It's like, when you know how much God cares, then what he's told you to do or what he exemplifies, like that means much more when you can get that core value down. And that goes for us too. Like we receive from people we know that we love or that loves us, right? We receive more from those people. So I love the quote. I actually have it on my LinkedIn. Anyways, closing thoughts. So I was thinking this, disciplining out of love. My grandfather was a public defender for the last 20 years before he retired. And for me, when I got disciplined, what that looked like was a 3 to 4 hour conversation at the kitchen bar to talk about what we went through and all of the repercussions and things like that. Is there any memories that you have of maybe, even if it was an unhealthy way of being disciplined, now that we're on this track? Just to end this on a lighter note, is there anything that comes to mind? This question wasn't on there. Or is there a way that you're a father, like, is there a way that you discipline that's you find that works or doesn't work? Or have you had a moment? Again, I didn't put this ahead of time. So
as a dad, one of the things we've been doing recently is wall squats. You disrespect mom.
Talk about Jocko,
their
bro.
Poor little legs shaking, and it's like, I'm doing with them. I'll give them that. I do it right with them. And whatever time they get, I double it for myself. And we have to talk, and it's just one of those things. Disrespect mom and you get wall squats. Pretty easy.
Yeah.
It was, we did air squats for a while. We did push-ups for a while. The wall squats are the ones that they like the least.
So you read all of Jocko's books.
Just disrespect mom. You're going to have to do some wall squats. For me, my father-in-law, London and I, my wife, we got married. She was 20, I was 21. And so I was a boy. And I think my father-in-law just was amazing. When we were dating, he would just text me, hey, tomorrow night, come meet me by my fire pit at my house. And we come and, he'd be sitting there with the fire lit and just, hey, so London didn't get home on time last night. And then we'd just leave it and wait. And it would be these amazing conversations where he was clear about what he wanted, and I'm sitting there as a boy, just wanting frustrated and man. But having him in my life to have those conversations was terrible. And now looking back, I'm like, if he didn't force me into those conversations, I'd probably, in a lot of ways, would still be a boy in a man's body.
My funny one I want to call out is nose in the corner. To Parker's point, if we disrespected mom, if we did something that deserved punishment, ultimately, it was, you got to put your nose in the corner. And so I'd have to go stand in this corner, put my nose in there, and I had older stepbrothers at the time that would just make it hell for us. They would just be behind us like, I'm having so much fun, like playing with this video game, and I'm sitting there in the corner as like a 9-year-old boy wanting to be a part of whatever's happening in the family gathering, and it's just like nose in the corner until they tell me it's time. You know what I mean? And they were just, this was the one that has really stuck with me to this point. I'm like, dang, that was some, some good times.
Oh my gosh, dude. You said something, the nose in the corner thing, that was suck. You said something, and we're at the end of this, so we're going to wrap up, but this could be a whole new conversation, but I think it's vital for men to hear if they're listening to this. I had that same experience with the men that were in my life when they'd come in and they'd correct me or they'd give, discipline, right? Even if it was in a loving way like this. Oh, you guys don't even know, like, this is so stupid, da 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 da. Like, it was this breaking, like a horse gets broken, right? That has to happen. And there's grown men walking around, grown men that have not developed that yet because it's not fun. And it's probably stems from a lot of pride. This idea of like, who are you to tell me? Or like, no, you know what I mean? But that once you can get to the place where you can receive correction or training or discipline or whatever, that is a good place to be. Mm-hmm. A good place like where you may even be able to sit with somebody and them have an opinion to where it comes off as correction, and they may even be wrong, but you would be able to go like, you know what? I appreciate your opinion.
Yeah.
As opposed to who are you to tell me that thing? Like that part of a man being broken, like who are you to tell me, like that thing, that needing to be broken. If we could talk to men, be okay with that side of you dying.
Yeah. And in my work field, feedback is extremely important. And I think a sign of a healthy man is someone who can receive feedback. Right. And actually do something with it. To your point, it's like there's a lot of people out there who don't receive feedback kindly. Right. And or like, to your point, have this mindset of like, who are you to tell me? And it's like a sign of a healthy man is someone who can receive constructive criticism, receive feedback, sit with it, stew on it, and move forward. Yeah. And that is just like, that's developed. I don't think that's just in a snap of a finger you can get to that point, but it's developed over time. And I can't tell you how important that is, 100%.
Yeah.
And a clear sign of a healthy man, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Last thing for me on that, I think it just goes back to the conversation we were having about your identity, is if your identity is in what you do, mm-hmm. and someone's correcting that, it feels like your identity's being mm-hmm. challenged and contested. And so, of course, you're going to fight for your identity. This is who I am. This is what makes me me. This is like the core component to who I am. But if your identity is settling into more and more and more so a deeper thing, who God says about you, how he's made you, how he's wired you, then I think it's a little easier to take some of that feedback and correction because it's more what we're doing. But if what you're doing is who you are, mm-hmm. then there's kind of this disconnect. It flows from who you are, but it's not who you are. And so I've noticed that in my own self when I'm getting over attached to something and my identity isn't secure in Christ. I'm not, because you have to maintain that, right? Yeah. Correction feels like that initial, I just want to rage. I just want to, go against it. I could sit across from you all day and, hey, thank you so much. And I get in the car and I'm just like, I'm hurting. Yeah. At the end of it, I'm covering, pain with anger or frustration. And the thoughts start flying, just quit. I'm just going to, and it's just immature Parker coming back out. Yeah. Just trying to grow the boy up into a man. And those moments show you those things.
Yes, it does. And I need to get better. You're really great at keeping your face in check, right? A lot of people would tell me that my face says what my mouth isn't, in the sense of like, give someone says something that the offended eyebrow, so I like to call it. Just
we're going full circle to like what you were saying earlier. It's like, on the first episode I was on, people were like, you're so serious. And I'm like, I'm just a chill guy. You know what I mean? Like my face might show seriousness, but inside I'm just chill. You know what I mean? Chill. I need to work on that. Something that I need to run with because I don't want to come off as too serious.
That's good. That was such a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you. Can I throw out a recommendation?
Absolutely.
There's a book by John Eldredge. It honestly summarizes so much of what we talked about called Fathered by God.
Yeah.
And I think this is, if you're a man and you're looking for, okay, but what do I do with this? You know, like, is it just about more Bible, just about more prayer? How do I find a small group? Whatever. This book will help you to be able to identify like how to actually receive all the stuff we've talked about, how to begin that steps, how to begin that journey. And it's the best book I've read. I've read a lot of books on this stuff. It's the best one-stop shop. It's accessible. It's simple. I cried through every chapter, just sitting underneath the love of God, and it changed my life. So Fathered by God, John Eldredge.
I just recommended this book for Christian for his Tuesday study because it's a lot of younger dads and stuff like that. Because I remember we were going through this book a little bit ago. So that's so good. Love that. So I appreciate you guys being on. There's going to be more of you guys so people know, as Brad has a lot of things going on. He's in Brazil this week, taking his daughter to jiu-jitsu tournament. He broke his ACL.
Tore.
Yeah, he broke it. He broke his knee. Every CL in his knee he broke because he just can't play sports anymore. So he's going to be out for like 6 weeks. He said he'll come back in August. So hopefully you guys can be on, and we'll have some other people on, but it'll be fun. So it was a great conversation. Hope you guys got a lot out of it. If you could do us a favor, let us know if it is ministering to you, or if you have questions, because I know that, you know, the little bit of time that we get each episode, there's a lot of depth. We understand, trust me, I go home and I go like, oh, we just barely scratched the surface on this stuff. There's so much more detail because I hate throwing Christian-y stuff out there. So like, even as a pastor, when we speak on stage, it's like the idea of like, don't just say, hey, go get closer to God. Like, people, they use these big words like deity and like, oh, I just watched one today, and I'm like, brother, dude, like that flew over 99% of the people's heads. We understand that. So if you want questions, clarification, any kind of resources, shoot us a message, put a comment on, and we'd love to get back to you on that.
And I will say too, I want to add at the end, it's an honor to sit here, both of you guys. You guys have huge influences in my life and a lot of people's lives in this body of the church that we attend. And I could not be more happy and grateful to be invited to sit with you two at a table. I will sit at any table with either one of you. So thank you.
Well,
thank you.
I love you too.
I'm honored, man.
Loved vulnerability. Get on board. So you guys have a great rest of your week. Thanks for tuning in.
Sweet.